The movie opens in downtown Buffalo, New York, where TV reporter Bruce Nolan is covering a story at the Cosby Family Bakery about the largest cookie ever baked in the city. At home with his girlfriend Grace, Bruce is dissatisfied with his job, believing that his colleagues see him as a clown with no credibility. Frustrated, he rages against God for not improving his life. Meanwhile, Bruce aspires to secure an anchor position, competing with his co-worker, Evan Baxter. After dropping Grace off at work, she gives Bruce a set of prayer beads to keep him safe. On his way, he gets stuck in traffic and arrives late to an important meeting. During the meeting, his friend-turned-rival Evan mocks him for his light-hearted coverage of the cookie at the bakery. Frustrated, Bruce complains to his boss, Jack, about always keeping his stories on hold while giving priority to Evan's. Jack assigns Bruce to cover a live story at Niagara Falls, giving him a chance to redeem himself. Excited, Bruce calls Grace to share the good news that he will be doing an exclusive live broadcast. He is briefed about the 156th anniversary of the site and prepared to interview Irene Dansfield, who completed a golden voyage. However, just as Bruce is ready to go live, his segment is put on hold, and Evan Baxter is given the broadcast instead. Seeing this, Evan has a meltdown on air, freezing up and unable to say a word. Later, Bruce publicly shows his frustration about not getting the anchor job, which leads to him being fired. While attempting to help a homeless man, Bruce is attacked and beaten by a street gang. Back home, Bruce once again blames God for causing him to lose his job, believing that God ignores him, favors Evan, and leaves him stuck in a mediocre life. After a fight with Grace, he goes for a drive and calls out to God for a sign, shaking the prayer beads and begging for a miracle. Distracted, he ends up in an accident. Furious, Bruce throws the prayer beads into the river, continuing to blame God for everything that has gone wrong. At that moment, his pager suddenly rings. The next morning at his apartment, Bruce's pager begins beeping repeatedly with a high-pitched tone. Not recognizing the number and growing increasingly annoyed, he finally throws the pager out into the street, where it gets run over by a car. To his surprise, it continues to beep. Aggravated beyond words and unable to stop the pager from beeping, Bruce finally calls the number. He hears a recording of someone who seems to know everything about his life and is given an address where he can supposedly get a new job. Curious, Bruce drives to the location. Stepping into the manhole by accident, he angrily blames God once again. He then enters a warehouse, finding the ground floor completely empty, except for an African-American janitor quietly mopping the floor. Bruce asks for directions to room 7 on the 7th floor, only to discover, much to his annoyance, that the elevator is out of service. As he heads toward the stairs, the janitor asks him to help mop the floor. Bruce sarcastically replies that he'd be happy to help in 7 days, at 7 o'clock. When Bruce arrives on the 7th floor, he finds himself in a vast, empty room painted stark white. Calling out for help, he sees the janitor climbing down a ladder from a brightly lit room above. Believing the man must have somehow taken the elevator to get there ahead of him, he claps as the lights flicker on and off, watching in confusion. The janitor then removes his coveralls, revealing himself impeccably dressed in a white suit and tie. Sitting behind a white desk, he surprises Bruce by sharing details about his father, whom Bruce never knew, and finally reveals that he is, in fact, God. God proceeds to demonstrate his powers by revealing a massive file cabinet that contains every detail of Bruce's life. When Bruce opens a drawer, it extends so far that it pushes him clear across the room before snapping shut, dragging him back as God reads through his list of complaints. God explains that he has a plan for Bruce, but Bruce still refuses to believe he is truly God, dismissing the encounter and teasing him by guessing how many fingers he has folded behind his hand. God tells Bruce that he is tired of his constant complaining. Since Bruce believes God isn't doing a very good job, he decides to endow Bruce with all his divine powers to see if he can do any better. Out on the street, Bruce discovers his new abilities when he walks effortlessly across the puddle that had tripped him earlier. Later, at a diner, he orders coffee, and the waitress persuades him to also try the tomato soup. Amused, Bruce decides to test his powers by parting the Red Sea in his bowl of tomato soup. The soup splits cleanly in two, Bruce's hair blowing back as if by a powerful wind, terrifying both the elderly customer at the counter and the waitress. While Bruce marvels at the trick, God appears in the diner and asks him to take a walk. As they talk, God explains the 2 rules of divine power: never reveal to anyone that you are God, and never interfere with free will. While standing near the water, God retrieves Bruce's prayer beads and hands them back to him. Now convinced that he truly is God, Bruce begins testing his powers in the streets. He conjures up a sharp new outfit and takes revenge on the street gang that assaulted him earlier, unleashing a swarm of bees to send them fleeing in panic. Bruce returns home overjoyed, carrying a huge bouquet of flowers for Grace. To impress her further, he even pulls the moon closer in the sky, creating a breathtakingly romantic night. While Grace is getting ready, Bruce uses his powers to make the evening unforgettable, and the two soon make love. The next morning, however, Bruce begins to hear countless voices, people's prayers flooding into his mind. Amused, he also uses his powers for small conveniences, like training his dog to pee directly into the toilet. On his quest to regain his job, Bruce uses his newfound powers to locate the long-missing body of Jimmy Hoffa with the help of a canine dog. When he reports the discovery back to the station, everyone applauds him, including his longtime crush. Jack apologizes, and Bruce is rehired, once again assigned to cover fluff stories. However, every piece he reports somehow turns into breaking news, earning him the nickname Mr. Exclusive. Meanwhile, Grace is eager for the special dinner Bruce promised, expecting that he is finally going to propose. On Evan's first night as anchor, Bruce mischievously uses his powers to distort Evan's voice and scramble the teleprompter, humiliating him in front of the entire audience during the live broadcast. Later, Bruce takes Grace out to dinner at the restaurant where they first met. When he gets down on one knee, Grace believes he is about to propose. To her disappointment, however, Bruce instead announces that he has finally secured the anchor position and will be going live on Monday. Suddenly, Bruce begins hearing countless voices in the background, overwhelming him until he starts yelling in frustration. God appears and assures him that he is not going crazy, explaining that what he hears are people's prayers. He scolds Bruce for not helping anyone, despite having God's powers for a full week. Back home, Bruce tries to manage the prayers by first ordering them into paper files, then posting them as notes, but the sheer volume is unmanageable. Finally, he sets up a computer program that downloads the prayers like emails and stores them digitally. Bruce attempts to answer the prayers one by one but quickly realizes the task is impossible. Frustrated, he gives up and simply hits a key marked Yes to All, granting everyone's wishes in hopes of making them happy. Meanwhile, the network throws a party to celebrate Bruce's promotion to anchor. By this point, Grace feels completely alienated and refuses to attend. Using his powers, Bruce manages to persuade her to come, but when she arrives, she finds him in the arms of a coworker who is trying to seduce him. Grace leaves heartbroken as Bruce desperately pleads with her, but she ends the relationship. Frustrated and bitter, Bruce uses his powers to unleash a rainstorm, ruining the party. Later, while watching the news, he discovers that all 1,100 lottery tickets purchased in the Buffalo area have won, creating chaos. God appears to Bruce once again, warning him that his selfish use of divine powers is not only causing disorder in the world, but also destroying his relationship with Grace. Bruce still tries to use his powers to win Grace back, but it fails, because he is breaking one of God's rules. He cannot interfere with free will. He pleads with Grace once more, but nothing seems to work. Meanwhile, the miracles he granted begin spiraling out of control, creating chaos and havoc across the city. During a live broadcast, Bruce's powers suddenly cut out, but he restores them with a clap. Moments later, Jack delivers breaking news that the entire city has descended into turmoil. Bruce rushes out to see for himself and finds the streets in absolute chaos. Bruce races back to the warehouse where he first met God and finds him mopping the floor. Coincidentally, it is 7 o'clock on the 7th day since their first encounter. Handing Bruce a mop, God smiles and says, "Right on time." As they work side by side, God explains that people constantly expect him to do everything for them, without realizing they already have the power to change their own lives. He tells Bruce that if he truly wants to see a miracle, he should be the miracle himself. Bruce finally realizes what he must do to repair the mess he has created, use his powers to help those in need rather than himself. He makes peace with Evan and ensures that Evan is reassigned to the anchor position, while Bruce returns to covering human interest fluff stories. He begins small helping the needy, teaching his dog better habits, and even completing the photo album that Grace had started to capture the highlights of their relationship. When Grace's sister comes to collect Grace's belongings, she notices the finished album. Touched, she takes pity on Bruce and tells him that Grace still prays for him every day. Bruce rushes to his computer and downloads Grace's prayers. A new one arrives, and he realizes she is praying for him at that very moment. He sees her crying, heartbroken, and painfully lonely. Overcome with guilt and emotional anguish, Bruce wanders the city in despair. Finally, he kneels in the middle of the road and prays, surrendering himself completely to God's will. At that instant, he is struck head-on by an oncoming truck. Bruce suddenly finds himself in the clouds, face to face with God in heaven. They talk, and God teaches Bruce how to truly pray, returning his prayer beads to him. Once Bruce begins to understand, God places his fingers against Bruce's chest, sending a powerful surge through him, a painful but transformative shock. In the next moment, Bruce awakens under glaring lights in the middle of the road, as paramedics work frantically to revive him with a defibrillator. Bruce is rushed to the hospital, badly injured. Grace, in tears, visits him and forgives him. After his recovery and discharge, still wearing a cast, Bruce returns to the bakery where the story began. The bakers have created a giant cookie shaped like a needle to promote a Red Cross blood drive, and a large crowd has gathered to donate.
Standing before them, Bruce happily engage.